Chapter 1. An Experience of a Lifetime. "Stuart, turn up the radio. The governor is on." It was late afternoon on Thursday, the 22nd of September, 1955. Grenada, the West Indies. My mother, Rita Nanton, her motherly instinct at an all-time high, sensed danger was approaching. My brother Stuart, her eldest son, though I also had another brother, David, 5 years older than Stuart, by a different mother, immediately detected the strident urgency in our mother's voice and dashed as fast as his 7-year-old legs would carry him to do her bidding. What unfolded at our home over the next several hours, in the final moments of that fateful day, and into the wee hours of the next, is almost inconceivable. But it did happen. I was there. The Nanton home was perched at the top of a hill at Old Fort, an old British fortress that had long ago lost its greater significance and original purpose. Our family's residence was one of only 3 that dotted the otherwise large expanse of tropical vegetation, hidden caves and a gigantic wall. The wall had served in bygone days as a defense against approaching enemies. On 2 of the remaining sides of the old wooden and concrete colonial-style house were sheer precipices that descended for several hundred feet. One side looked towards the main town of St. George's, with its naturally protected harbor. The other side afforded a view of the major sports ground of Queen's Park, and on westwards to a cobalt-blue Caribbean Sea, with its infinite horizon. The 4th flank of the old fortress sloped away gently to a sparsely populated area of St. George's, bypassing one of the main cemeteries, the eternal resting place of many over the centuries. That day of destruction was one of the hottest the island had experienced, yet visually it was one of the most beautiful. There was not a cloud in the sky, nor a ripple on the ocean, nor a fluttering of a leaf. Far away, footsteps could be heard easily, the most minuscule movement observed. It was perfectly still, calm, serene, uncanny. Like everyone else on the islands of the Grenadines, as well as on St. Vincent, Barbados, St. Lucia, and Dominica, our family in Grenada had been alerted to an approaching tropical weather system, and therefore the need to make ready. We tentatively went about the usual series of preparations for the possible unceremonious events of the days to come. Stuart jerked up the volume on the small shortwave radio, our family's only means of keeping in touch with the rest of the world. Fortunately, WIBS, WIBS, the Windward Islands Broadcasting Service, had been established earlier that same year, headquartered in Grenada. Everyone in the Windward Islands listened to this new, one and only radio station on the island, with its substations in St. Vincent, St. Lucia, and Dominica. Now, a virtual stampede of feet of different sizes and intensity of sound pounded rapidly in the direction of the source of the governor's voice. The feet belonged to my mother, our housekeeper Gertrude, David, and me. In our boyish excitement, David and I found it necessary to instantly create our own version of an Olympic-style heat, and, in a mad dash to see who could get to the finish line first, arrived almost simultaneously. Over 60 years later, the winner has yet to be decided. The governor, Sir Edward Betham, British governor of the Windward Islands, was addressing listeners in the chain of Caribbean islands that formed his area of responsibility under the British colonial government that held sway from Jamaica to Trinidad. The islands the governor now addressed were Dominica, St. Lucia, St. Vincent, the Grenadines, and Grenada. The governor, in his familiar formal British accent, sounded a most somber note as he delivered his dismal message to the inhabitants of the islands late in the afternoon on that yet-to-be-disturbed September day. His report focused on the progress of the tropical storm. It posed an imminent threat to the region and was fast approaching the island chain. My family and I sat huddled around the little radio. Governor Beetham spoke, and each of us processed the information in our own way. In the wee hours of that morning, the weather system had intensified and had been upgraded to hurricane status. In Barbados, 162 miles to the northeast of Grenada, it had already caused heavy damage and loss of life to 38 people, and left 20,000 others homeless. The governor reported on the path of the hurricane. It had a name: Janet. Governor Beetham informed listeners that Hurricane Janet posed an immediate threat to the Windward Islands. The governor was now repeating a warning to all the islands. He went on to state that the hurricane's path put St. Vincent in the direct line of fire. He invited all listeners to pray for the people of St. Vincent and their safety. In the 4 Windward Islands, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, St. Lucia and Dominica, people who could afford to own radios listened and hung on to the governor's every syllable. In Grenada, my parents and we 3 children in the Nanton home were doing the same, leaning in to hear every word of Governor Beetham. Suddenly, click, the governor was cut off, mid-speech. His voice disappeared. The little shortwave radio was still on, but there was no transmission from the radio station. Something was not right. A deafening silence hovered ominously over the room. The 5 of us stood up. We stared at the radio, as if willing it to speak to us. It was as if WIBS and Governor Beetham had been sucked into the still, eerie calmness of that strange day. There was no further sound. The station had most certainly been a victim of some unexpected event. Wibbs was off the air. Something else was in the atmosphere.